start our meeting. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councillor Duggar,
I'm here.
Councillor Hartmeyer Prigg,
Here.
Councillor Hassan,
Here.
Councillor Kimmy,
Here.
Councillor Teeter,
Here.
Councillor Tivnon,
Here.
Mayor Beatty.
Here. All right, tonight we are going to do visitor comment section. We have a work session on bus rapid transit. We have a proclamation. We have a pretty hefty consent agenda and a few public hearings and a work session. So with that, we're going to start with public comment. And as a reminder, public comment is an essential part of local government business. Hearing directly from our community helps us make informed decisions. However, it is not a time for dialogue. And to help us be compliant with our open Oregon meeting laws, we will hear what you have to say but not respond to it. If follow-up is needed, we will have the city manager or the recorder do that. It looks like we only have one public testimony tonight, and it's Evelyn. Evelyn, please join us at the dais, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the council.
No worries. Thank you so much, Mayor Beatty and the rest of the council. For the record, my name is Evelyn Kocher. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a resident of the Elmonica neighborhood. I am a lifelong resident of Beaverton and graduate of Beaverton High School. I'm here today to talk on two topics. The first one is regarding the safety of Beaverton employees and city council members. As you may know, since the election of President Trump, there have been there's been a large rise in threats for folks who are considered visible minorities all over the country, and Oregon and Beaverton are not exempt from those threats. These threats have included folks of racial minorities, gender minorities, and folks with disabilities. So I am here today to encourage you, in the light of this large increase in threats to these folks, to keep not only Beavertonians safe, but also the folks who work for the city, to take all measures possible to ensure that their safety during this time of heightened tensions and increased threats to their own safety when they're trying to serve the public. The other thing that I wanted to speak on was the possibility of putting forward a resolution to make Beaverton an LGBTQ plus sanctuary city. Beaverton is already an immigrant sanctuary city, and recently, given the threats to not only the trans community, but the queer community at large, that's seen a resurgence with book bans in the last few years. Numerous cities around the country, 7 cities between California, Washington, Pennsylvania, and Missouri have declared themselves as sanctuary cities for the LGBTQ plus community, declaring that they are safe havens for transgender healthcare, as well as they will not be complying with any state or federal order mandating that staff members or law enforcement officers adhere to any policies that adversely affect the LGBTQ plus community. In a atmosphere where this community is often demonized and where we've seen acceptance actually go backwards in the last few years, I urge the council to consider making Beaverton a sanctuary city. We would not be the first one to do this in the country, so there's a blueprint on what this would entail, but we would be the first one to do it in Oregon. And I would be tremendously proud as a lifelong Beavertonian and a member of the LGBTQ plus community if my hometown could be the first one to do this in the state. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, up next is work session, Agenda Bill 25020, overview of the local preferred alternative for the TV Highway Bus Rapid Transit project. There's obviously a handful of you guys in the audience here for this tonight. So who is the lead city staffer that's going to be ushering this? Then she'll invite your posse up. I mean, you could come up if you're talking. I just want a staff member to introduce you and what you're doing. And who are you?
Hello, Council. My name is Jocelyn Blake. I'm the Government Relations Manager for the City of Beaverton, and I'm here to introduce a project called the TV Highway Transit and Safety Project which is a regional collaborative project with our partners who are here to talk today from Metro. We have one person online who's going to be presenting to us, and thank you. She's on the East Coast right now, so that is why we are out of agenda order. So I will let them individually introduce themselves.
David Alwas, Capital Planning Manager at TriMet and the Project Manager for the TV Highway Project. Happy to be here.
And I'm Jess Sadeb. I'm a Principal Regional Planner at Metro and the Project Manager for this project. And I again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thanks very much for shifting the agenda order around. I am in Atlanta for meetings related to a conference that's coming to Portland this fall. So we're at a spot in this project where we're going to be asking our steering committee to vote on the locally preferred alternative at our next meeting, which is on February 13th. And Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg's been participating.
I'm sorry, hold on a second. We're having issues with the audio. Can we, is it us? So what do we need to tell Jess that potentially you need to be closer to the microphone on your computer? Our volume's all the way up in the room and we can't really hear you.
We had the opposite problem in Cornelius last night, so is this any better?
Come a little bit closer. We prefer you loud and outspoken.
Thanks.
There
I'll
you
just
go.
lean in and look awkwardly close to my camera in that case.
So any Metro staff, feel free to take some photos for later.
Thanks a lot. All right. Please feel free to interrupt again if there's any time at which you're having a hard time hearing me. I'd rather that than folks be straining to hear. So as I mentioned, Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg will be a member of our steering committee. We're asking to vote on the LPA of this project. That's basically an outline of what the project is, and we'll get to that a little bit later, exactly what that consists of. But that's why we're here before you this evening, is to sort of support her in that vote along with the rest of the members of the steering committee next week. So this project is really seeking to improve safety and the travel experience for transit riders on TV Highway. It builds on a lot of years of planning and community identified needs for safety and better transit. There's been planning along this corridor from the county, from ODOT, from Forest Grove, from Metro as part of the Get Moving 2020 measure, and also from the city. You know, this is really something that kind of builds upon the work that you all are doing and shortly implementing on the Canyon Road portion of TV Highway to make it a more livable, roadway for people. Lastly, a main goal of this project is to actually make something happen. I just mentioned a lot of planning efforts, and obviously the city's construction moving forward is great, but there are a lot of times that projects have been planned on TV Highway, and we really want this one to not only be planned, but happen. So our goal is to move forward with funding from the Federal Transit Administration. Next slide, please. So why address the line 57? This is TriMet's line that runs from Beaverton Transit Center all along TV Highway through Hillsborough to Cornelius and Forest Grove, ending at the terminus in Forest Grove. We know that TV Highway has more serious and fatal crashes than other roads in the region. It's part of it is a top 25 corridor in the region on our high injury network. And a lot of those, a disproportionate number of those crashes involve people walking, including those accessing transit and near transit stops. It's also the highest ridership line in Washington County, with over 6,000 people every day riding this line. And it also has had the highest bounce back in ridership of all of TriMet's bus lines since COVID-19, meaning that we know it's a really a lifeline service for people in the corridor. We also know, based on taking a look at ridership and earlier surveys, that most people use this line not as an end-to-end service. They're really using it to get to daily needs in the corridor. Those shorter trips to go from, say, Cornelius into Hillsborough to the Kite Diaz neighborhood to shop at sort of culturally specific businesses, or there are folks in Aloha going into Beaverton. So those are the types of trips we believe people are making on the corridor. Unfortunately, when they're making those trips, these are the types of situations they're dealing with, waiting for the bus, like this gentleman here, stops without shelter, seating, or lighting, or even in some cases without a curb separating them from nearby high-speed traffic. Lastly, we know that those trips can take a lot longer than driving, in some cases up to 2 times as long. Next slide, please. So this project that we're working on right now has been going on since about April of 2022. That's when the first steering committee meeting happened. That steering committee consists of elected officials from the 4th as well as leadership from Metro, ODOT, TriMet, and 4 community-based organizations that represent communities in the corridor. That group early on adopted a purpose and need, which is really reflected in those goals that I mentioned on the first slide, and studied existing conditions in the corridor. Some of that ridership data and safety data that I mentioned, also information about who lives in this corridor. You know, higher percentages of people who are low income, higher percentages of people who don't have vehicle access. When I joined this project, it had gotten to a point of a first round of design that had a price tag of $550 million. And for pretty much everyone around that table, that felt untenable. The steering committee sent us back to the literal drawing board to come up with a new design and a cost that felt more achievable to the partners around the table. We did that and came back with the $300 million project that we're talking about tonight. So we lopped off a very significant chunk of that and got to a point where we feel like this is something that could move forward. This summer, our steering committee reaffirmed that decision to pursue a federal project, and we were really encouraged by the outreach we did, especially this past fall, with an online survey that we got over 1,000 responses to, including about 250 from residents in the city of Beaverton, who largely approved of the draft station locations that we were asking people to comment on. We also know from that residents of Beaverton who answered that survey, also, about half of them commented not only on station locations in Beaverton, but in other parts of the corridor. So we know that folks who are residents and constituents of yours do use this line in other parts of the corridor. They're riding to Hillsborough, they're riding to Forest Grove and Cornelius because they told us about the locations in those jurisdictions as well. We know that folks are really looking forward to the benefits that this project could bring, and Dave's going to take a minute here to talk about what those benefits are.
All right, thank you, Jess. So, a few things about the benefits. Yeah, we sure do. Can you jump to the next one, Jess? Thank you. Actually, I think we skipped over one. Did we not? I'm sorry. Nope, you're in the right place. Thank you very much. Okay, so safety and accessibility, these are some key benefits we're looking at here. So enhanced crossings, traffic signals at all stations. This is a commitment that the project is making. What that means is we're going to be making sure that all of the stations are connected either by a signal or a rapid flashing beacon. I'm not sure if you folks have seen those on the corridor out there. They're the flashing lights with the median island usually coupled with it. Something like that. So we want to make sure that those crossings are safe. That should have a pretty good benefit for the community in general as well. So we're expecting that these station pairs are going to happen about every 3rd mile. So that means we're going to be able to make an investment in crossings at least in every 3rd mile. So that's great. We're proposing to eliminate what we're calling the partial pull-out stop design. I think everybody's seen these. This is where the bus pulls over into the bike lane, but not really out of the travel lane. So it leaves an ambiguous situation where a driver may think they can squeeze by, but turns out there's another truck to their left, and there seems to be a pattern of rear end and sideswipe accidents that we've noticed. So the project's committing to make sure that either the bus is completely out of the lane or completely in the lane. Another thing that we want to do, and we are committed to doing, is station platforms with curbs and waiting areas. So the photograph that you saw of that gentleman in Aloha, you probably noticed there was no curb. You're just standing on the edge of the road. And we want to make sure that our riders have the dignified experience that they really deserve out there. And so they can be standing up on a curb, out of the drainage, and with some other benefits that I'm going to talk about in just a second. So let's jump to the next one here. So rider experience. So stations, not only will they have curbs, we're going to have lighting. So we expect to have about 2-foot candles between the pylon and the shelter itself. We expect that there will be lighting, or seating, as well as real-time arrival information. Those are the signs that are up on the shelter usually, or on the pylon, that tells you when that next bus is arriving. We expect to have increased speed and reliability as well. So that's going to be brought through a few different tools. Transit signal priority is something that we've had some pretty good luck with on the Division Transit project. It is a system that links the signals together and communicates with the vehicle. And so it knows when the vehicle's coming, so it can either extend a green or shorten a red cycle so that the bus can just squeeze right through that green signal. We've been seeing about 20% improvement in travel times on the Division line, which is pretty impressive. And so we think that would be a nice thing to bring here. ODOT's already making some good investments in fiber that makes that possible. And so we're going to be able to double down on that investment that they're currently making. All-door boarding. We're looking at articulated vehicles. These buses have 3 wide sets of doors, unlike our typical bus that has a single door that you enter through the front and maybe an exit door that you can get off. But these are nice big wide doors, so people can enter through any door as they're boarding, and there's a little tap thing for your ticket there. So you can just tap your card as you come and go, and so the boarding process is a lot faster. That has some benefits for the bus, of course, but it also has some traffic benefits because the bus isn't slowing traffic as much. The other thing that is a major tool for us is balancing or optimizing the stop locations along the route. And so I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. But we use the data that we have to really focus where those stops are best positioned. And that allows us to just get a faster trip. So let me jump to the next one here. So another thing that the TV Highway project is proposing to do is to improve our headways. And so right now the headways out there are about 15 minutes most of the day, and we're proposing to drop that to 12-minute service. And that's a commitment that TriMet has stood up a few months ago as part of our FX system plan, and it's something we're proud to be able to offer. Mentioning the FX system plan, I want to say that this line, TV Highway, we also have another line, 82nd Avenue, that's also moving forward in a sort of a BRT capacity. That's our FX system. And of course, I think everybody's aware of the Division FX2 line that's currently open. That's not all we have up our sleeve. We're working on an FX system plan, and so we're looking at rolling out, I think our goal is to get about 12 lines a network by 2050, and we've been working with staff, and I know that Jocelyn's been involved in some of these conversations already, and so I'm excited to be able to just announce that and let you all know that we're using TV Highway as a testing ground to kind of build some standards and some other tools for rolling that out. So next slide. So something about the station location process here. So this is one graphic of many that we have used, and this particular graphic is showing lift locations along TV Highway. What that means is the ramp on the vehicle is deployed, and every time it's deployed, it gets counted, and our system registers it. So we know where people are using the lift component of that vehicle when that ramp gets deployed. And so that helps us to really understand where people with mobility devices are accessing or are exiting the system. And so in this particular example, it really helped us to kind of focus on what stops are clearly most important for those riders. Other factors that we're looking at, obviously high ridership stops. We want to make sure we're accommodating other transfers to other lines. There's quite a few north-south lines as well as light rail that we're making connections to. And also ride connection. We want to make sure that we're providing connections to that service as well. We also need to pay attention to what the community is telling us on this, and we have some pretty good intel about, grocery stores and key locations, working with staff in all these different jurisdictions, helping us understand where those important destinations are and making sure that we've got those captured. Our public outreach that we recently completed did some work, and we got responses from the community that were pretty positive about the station locations. And so we were seeing numbers of, out of 5, we were getting on average about 4 in ratings in terms of station locations. So people were feeling pretty good about the station locations. We have just a little bit more work to do. Next slide. This is the proposed map right now of the station locations that we brought forward with the LPA. I'm not sure if you can squint closely into Cornelius there. There's a couple little dots that have some circles around them. They're really close together. We have a bit more work to do in Cornelius, and so there's some choices to be made there. But other than that, we've had pretty good consensus around the stop locations. So we're feeling pretty strong, and I'm confident in what we've got going here. So I'll hand it back to Jess to talk about the funding strategy.
Great, thanks, Dave. Next slide, please. So before I mentioned that we had worked really hard with TriMet and Metro staff, our consultant team, and a lot of back and forth and flexibility from ODOT to get from a $550 million project to a $300 million project. The reason that $300 million point is the sweet spot is that is where we can get our 50% off coupon from the federal government via a capital investment grant program, Small Starts Grant. The cap for that program from the feds is $150 million. In order to be eligible for that, we as project partners need to bring forward local match for the other 50% of the project. What you see on the slide here is our current funding strategy for how that could happen from all of the regional partners and the state. Our FFA is the regional flexible funds that are currently being discussed for putting forward a bond that would fund several large transportation projects around the region. The carbon reduction program are already funds that have been allocated to this corridor. And then that navy blue slice is what would be taken care of by TriMet and the 4 cities in the county within the corridor. And what we're going to be asking folks at the steering committee meeting is to, as partners, say that we can all come together as the region for that $100 million total so that we have a really clear statement to the state in this legislative session when we're asking them to bring forward that last $50 million to the project so that they would be responsible for about 17% of the total project cost. And I do just want to note that we know that all of these funding amounts are contingent upon jurisdiction or agency approval processes that are going to take place over the next couple months. Next slide. The timing that we would need this funding on is laid out here in the schedule. TriMet is planning to apply to enter what's called project development. That's the first stage of getting into the federal project here this summer. At that point, we need to have all $25 million of project development funds committed, meaning there's no further action that anyone needs to take on them. So they're in an approved budget or they've been set aside for a future budget year via an IGA that would be approved before TriMet applies for PD. The next time that we would be asking individual agency partners to commit their dollars would be in that summer, late summer, early fall 2027 timeframe when we need to bring the rest of the construction funds together to get to that full $150 million match. So you can see if everything lines up that the revenue service would begin in fall of 2030. Next slide, please. So these last two slides just lay out where we're headed in our next steering committee meeting. As I mentioned, we're asking for committee approval of the LPA, the locally preferred alternative, which is basically what Dave just showed on that map. It identifies the mode, which is bus rapid transit, the alignment along TV highway, and then the general station locations, meaning that we say that there's a station at the intersection of Murray Boulevard. It doesn't outline exactly where within the intersection those platforms go. And then lastly, we are asking folks to approve that funding strategy, that high-level statement that we are going to come together as a region with that $100 million. Next slide, please. So we're before you tonight in this January-February timeframe. We've been presenting to the other councils in the corridor. We will come back to you in the spring. The next part of the process is that every jurisdiction in the corridor adopts the LPA themselves. And then it's approved by TriMet, endorsed by JPACT, and then Metro Council. We would also be asking for those IGAs and budget approvals as you move through your budget processes this spring. And then in the summer, as I mentioned, TriMet will apply for project development, and we will hear the outcomes of the state contribution at that point. So that's what we have to share for you tonight. We're happy to take any questions if we've got time for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Dave, right? I sensed by your words what you were saying was really exciting, but I couldn't tell with your facial expression. So we're just trying to follow along on what was super exciting. So I think we're good to go. I do want to thank Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg for stepping in my place and taking a seat on this. She's kind of like the sidekick transportation expert on City Council, and this was an immense commitment on your behalf to do this. So I really appreciate it. And I think she's been a wonderful advocate from the city perspective. So I think anything I'm going to say tonight will not be a surprise, because I'm sure Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg has advocated a lot of that. I have a couple concerns, but I want to start with I understand how difficult a project across this many jurisdiction is when we're trying to do something bold. So I'm here for that piece, and I recognize it. What's challenging for the city is, we're competing for RUFA funds too. Our Loop project is the Bureau's #1 priority, and this cross-sends with that. And so our local match is going to be coming from the same funding pot that our project and our #1 priority is in. So I think it is going to be very hard for the City Council to deprioritize our #1 priority. However, Jess from Metro, we have been asking for Metro support on the Loop for pieces of it for funding. So if we're going to break free some funding from other sources that we are committing to our #1 project, we need some help from Metro on getting funding for the Loop project. And it's not transactional, it is a reality. We are in a budget deficit, and any money we use out of our street fund or Bureau is going to come at the cost of another City Council priority. So that's kind of where I'm at. My other large concern is we're making really massive investments, but we're not touching the road. The road is in extreme disrepair. We have been begging ODOT to come in and bring their road to a standard that Beaverton and cities in general say it is. When you walk out there, that road is terrible. And so asking us to commit funding to improve this piece, but ODOT not committing to fix the road is problematic for me as a mayor, because that road has virtually no life left in it. And now we're putting people out there, and the road is not sufficient. And so I get if we add the road piece to this, it makes this project undoable. So I understand that piece, but it's still really hard for us to take city investment into a road that we do not own, that is not being maintained to a standard that is sufficient for us. My other question is around process, because what we're hearing from the Department of Transportation is changing priorities for the grant. How does the changing priorities in the Trump administration measure up to what we're asking for? Because we just submitted a raised construction grant and had to change our entire application. So how confident are we with how the project is lined up based on our values that a federal matching grant of this size is doable? Particularly last week, the Department of Transportation issued guidance that funding should go to cities and counties that have high birth rate and high marriage rate. So I'm asking for your guys' political analysis of the situation.
I'll take those last, I mean, it feels like those are really two questions that need addressing.
Yeah.
One is the pavement question and one is the federal landscape question. Last one first. There's been a lot going on in the last 3 weeks. Our federal affairs staff are working incredibly hard to try to keep up with what's going on. None of this is settled. This is a moment in time where we all just have to kind of hang on and watch things unfold as they go through the courts, as things continue to evolve. I don't think that we can take anything for granted right now, and so it's really in our best interest to keep up with what's going on, trust our federal affairs staff, that they're doing their best to understand how all of this ends up shaking out. It's not clear where things will be in 2 years, which is when we are actually going to have to be applying for funding. That schedule that I showed is what we would plan to do, which is actually apply for a grant agreement in mid to fall 2027. That's good for 2 reasons. One is that it's just farther away, and so more will be revealed in these next 2 years as we understand and sit with what this administration's priorities are and the changes that they make. The other is that is after the midterms. So there is a chance that there will be a change and a shift in power in Congress. That's what we saw in the first Trump administration, and there was definitely a shift in approach to the capital investment grant program after that happened. And it was only after that change that some funds did start to shake free in this grant program. And in fact, some of the only projects that were awarded funding during the last Trump administration are TriMet's FX2 line on Division and their recent expansion of the Red Line through the Better Red project. So there's so much momentum through partners in this corridor, through the ask to the state this year, that the timeline that we're working on, we're planning to continue moving forward even in the face of federal uncertainty. In our steering committee meeting last week, one of our new steering committee members, Councilor Salgado from Hillsborough, asked a smart question, which was, do we have a plan if we don't receive that federal funding? And in fact, we did walk through an exercise last year of exploring what a non-federal project looked like. It brings significantly less benefit to the corridor. It brings some amount of benefit and meets some of the goals that we're trying to meet with this project. So the good thing is we do kind of have that fallback option, and we understand what that project could look like. That's a locally funded one. It's a lesser project, and it doesn't double everyone's money for what they're investing, or double, or, you know, the cities and the county investment is really leveraging both state and federal dollars. And just on the pavement, Dave can speak to this a little bit too. This same question was asked at the steering committee recently as well. And Ryan Winchheimer, who's the Region 1 ODOT manager, sits on the steering committee and, you know, gave the answer that ODOT is not going to be repaving any local streets after a certain year that I cannot rattle off on the top of my head. Ryan is the one who has that year in his head because it's ODOT's responsibility. But they are obviously in a really challenging spot right now, and they know that they're looking ahead to a future. If there's not major action for them in this legislative session, that they're really only going to be repaving interstate. So I know that Beaverton is suffering with that issue with state roads. It's an issue all the way across the state in terms of maintenance.
I mean,
But Dave, I don't know if you want to speak to anything about the repaving that will happen as part of the major intersection improvements that would be part of the project in Beaverton.
Yeah, happy to. So there are a couple of intersections that are in Beaverton that actually be rebuilt, fully rebuilt as part of this project. So Murray Boulevard, big intersection, We need to actually shift a little bit north to get out of the Union Pacific Railroad right away, and that means that intersection is going to get reconstructed and taper out. You know, there's probably 1,000 feet of reconstruction there. I know 170th is another one that's going to also need to get rebuilt. That's on the edge of Beaverton's boundaries there. So there will be some work done, and we're going to be out there feathering our work back into it. And so there'll be a little bit of paving around everything that we do. But yeah, I wish that we could take on repaving the whole roadway, but that was the $1 billion project that didn't pass during T2020. So.
All right. Councilor Tivnon.
I'm going to phone a friend really quick with our Public Works Director. Do we have any signalized timing on the streets that run across these proposed stops along TV Highway? Okay, that are on like Milliken and the others that go off, the ones that are going perpendicular to the line. We don't have any signal timing related to the lights before or after. Sorry.
Are you thinking about the plan where we queued them up for Canyon already? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or just instances where is it something that we do? Is it something that we have done or might have plans to do? I'm thinking specifically around like Hall and Watson and the Loop project, and how do we keep traffic flowing going north and south? And so just to give you like pause a beat and hear if there's anything about that might factor into the question that I've got.
Well, and we do have some improvements planned on Cedar Hills. Do you have some information on that?
About a year ago, I want to say, our traffic engineering group was able to secure, I think, a little bit over $1 million to do signal timing updates on Cedar Hills Boulevard. I know this is something that they've been also laying fiber throughout in every year as we update our signals, and are also in collaboration with Washington County around like Shoals Ferry. So they are looking at the interconnected nature of that on our side streets, but I couldn't speak to Murray, but I know Cedar Hills is on the docket and is coming.
Okay, thank you for that. And the reason why that came to mind for me is thinking about like intelligent transportation system design in general. There's like these hawk signals, for the flashing beacons, signal timing, the flashing yellow arrow on lefts and stuff like that. It's all of it goes towards just creating more efficiency within the system and moving things through. So then I started thinking about the signal timing, which sounds fantastic for the buses, and that there's now mechanisms within the buses to help trigger that. Have you run into any conflicts with timing that, or the transit signal doing that, disrupting other signal timing that might be happening going perpendicular to it through the intersections?
So it's a good, complicated question, yes. So let me give you an example. This system is heavily used on Division for the FX2 line, and it's pretty interesting in how it works. Is what it's trying to do is it grabs a little extra time from either side, and each of those signals can be set up, on their own to, grab as much as available and as little as is necessary, right? So it's trying to minimize any impact to side streets, but I will say that it creates flexibility for the side streets as well because the equipment's all there. And so if you have a need north to south that also wants to take advantage of some sort of transit signal priority, and we're doing this along Division because we have bus lines that cross it. And so we've been able to actually use it to get like the line 10 across Hawthorne and over to its connections through Ladd's Addition and utilize that signal as well. So it's possible the city of Beaverton would be able to leverage that investment for any kind of issues you see. So it's anything that we would do with the transit signal priority is not permanent. It's all sort of learning as it goes along. And so if there are any kind of hiccups that come along, the efficiencies, we're happy to share those with you. So
Okay.
I wouldn't expect it to cause problems. It should solve problems.
Okay, yeah, I think it was just building off of what the mayor was saying about this is a facility that cuts right through our city, but we don't have ownership over it. We don't even have a lot of influence over it in terms of seeing improvements made or the road work. And so just making sure that any improvements that are made along don't have unintended consequences of creating conflicts with facilities that we do.
And some of
have
the
control
old
over.
TSP systems, that's not a uncommon thing that happened because you would basically plug it in and time it, and then you'd walk away and be like, I think it's working.
Yeah.
We just weren't sure. But, this new system, actually, you can monitor it, live, and you can see how it's working. And so it's pretty easy to, to tweak and make sure it's working for everybody.
Okay.
The improving technologies on signalization are allowing them to talk to each other further out. So eventually, all of these will be able to talk to each other, and they'll be able to work together.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you for the clarity on that. And I'm going to hand things back over. I just want to say I love the lift data findings, just being able to tap into all of this different information you're gleaning and not even realizing you're sitting on really informative stuff sometimes, that just looking at where the lift is coming up for wheelchairs and having that inform the station area planning is fantastic. So thanks for sharing that with us.
And that is high praise from Councilor Tivnon. She does not wield it unearned. Councilor Husson.
Yeah, hey, thank you all for your presentation. Just echoing what others are saying, but want to just take a moment. Our mosque is off TV Highway. A lot of our schools are off TV Highway. And so it's really heartwarming to see the list of proposed station locations, because it's all the spaces that I was like, oh my God. And it's like, oh no, it's there. Like Milliken is there, 170th is there. And as a frequent person that lives in that area quite extensively and has watched construction in those areas, which is going to be so much fun in 2027. I'm just really thankful. So it feels like, the committee, along with Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg and all of the things, are doing the things that they need to do. So I'm just really thankful to see these stations, because these are areas that I get to frequent quite a bit. So there's a lot of unknown with what will happen with funding, and I will just keep my fingers crossed and stay positive and hopeful that we're able to get this moving. So thank you.
Councilor Kimmy.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I just hope Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg put some color pink in their design. But when we are rebuilding the bus station, are we going to rebuild sidewalk also?
To a limited extent. So there's going to be a certain amount of construction that'll be necessary to tie things together. So in Beaverton in particular, most of your infrastructure is built out, and so we're not needing to add sidewalks. There are places in the quarter where we will be adding sidewalks. There's area between Cornelius and Hillsborough that doesn't have sidewalks on either side of the road. And in order to do some station consolidation there, we need to add a sidewalk and some crossings.
Okay. What is your criteria for width of a sidewalk?
That's your criteria.
So it goes with our...
Yeah, so we'll meet your requirements, your standards there. And so if it's got
But
an
the
existing
current-
sidewalk, yeah.
The current infrastructure does not meet our updated standard.
Right,
And I
so
would
that's-
argue that while there is sidewalks, I'd
Yeah.
love to take a walk with you so you could see the disarray of the telephone poles and the non-ADA requirements, and getting from one point to another is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, that was the point of mine, where we are encouraging people to use public transportation, which will be, hopefully a lot of people use it. But our sidewalk, what is the current width of a sidewalk on TV Highway right now? Is it 6?
It varies quite a bit. And I think you'll know that on the south side, there isn't a sidewalk for much of it along the segment between Beaverton
Right.
and Hillsborough. I would guess that it's probably somewhere around 8, just kind of on an average maybe, and probably less in some
So about
places.
6. Yeah, so that's where I wanted to know what is our city's influence on that and width. And we currently have certain updated complete street policy, which requires certain width of sidewalk. And when we are doing this, I hope we can update the sidewalk and make it consistency for wheelchair access and other people, because we don't want people to feel uncomfortable walking on the sidewalk to the bus station, number one. And right now, our design doesn't incentivize people to cross the highway. So what is your criteria for even crosswalk? What is the width requirement?
So, are you thinking about the actual width between the lines in the crosswalk?
The width, like,
Yeah, that I'd have to look to the jurisdiction again, or ODOT, for what that width would be. Typically, it's anywhere from like 8 to 14 feet wide. But they're stripes, and we're happy to build them per the standard that we'd want.
right. So, I mean, I love the fact that we have more buses available for people to travel, use public transportation, but then it's a matter of how can we encourage people to get to the bus station, and they feel be utilizing more if they feel safe. But our crosswalk is kind of narrow. It doesn't encourage people to walk. I would love to see expansion on that if you have a power to do so, and more lights, flashing beacons. So on the crosswalk, people feel at dark during winter time, you encourage people to walk there. So I hope you can consider that when you're designing it, and hopefully if you have a leftover money, we can widen the sidewalk, the entire that corridor. Another thing is that hopefully it doesn't go over budget if it starts happening, because I don't think we can contribute anything more. So I don't know if you have any comment.
So we want everything, and we want it really awesome, but we don't have any more money to give
Yeah,
you. Is that summarize it?
yes.
Okay.
This gives me an opportunity to give my spiel on this. So this project, I think, as many know, T2020 was $880 million. We think it was under budgeted then. It was probably close to $1 billion. Jess mentioned it. We got it down from $550 million down to $300, and we did that by really pulling back and really hitting just the basics, the essentials. So these are stations and they're crossings. That's really what we're talking about. There is so much that needs to be done on TVA Highway. There is so much that needs to be done. And this is going to do a lot, but it can't do everything. And so I'm hearing what you're saying about, adding sidewalks and making things wider. I'm a huge proponent of that. I'm a pedestrian, cyclist, transit user. Those are all things I want to do. That's why I'm in this business. But the reality is we have a $300 million project, and we're right up against the edge of that. And if we have any money left over, absolutely, we're going to put it into safety benefits for pedestrians and cyclists as much as we can, because that infrastructure is in such poor condition.
But he did say if there's extra money, Beaverton
Sorry, if I
gets
could
it
just
first.
add one thing to that. This is really, I couldn't agree more with Dave. Before I came to Metro, I worked for 10 years in multimodal transportation planning and design, and worked for the firm that did your Complete Streets policy recently. And that's why I'm in this, is to make sure that people can get around safely without having to get in a car, because they might not have one, they might not have access to one. So I would love to see all of those things too. And it's a unique opportunity, I think, to use a transit project to bring some of these safety benefits to the corridor. It's an opportunity to have a pretty big bite at a chunk of federal funding that wouldn't be available to this corridor if it were not a transit project. So because we're pursuing that avenue of small starts funding, that opens up a different world of dollars than it would be. We're not pursuing a raise grant, right? We're pursuing what is, in a lot of regards, a safety project that is, couched within this transit project.
Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing with us today. I love some bus rapid transit, so I'm really excited about this. Definitely can see the work that you all put into this and the progress that has been made over the past several years. So I'd be excited to support it. I do have a couple concerns, and they are very similar to the mayor's, just with our loop being potential competitor project, just thinking through how we can make both work is very important to me. And then the second was just a general frustration that the road is in such bad condition and ODOT doesn't seem to be responsive to that. And I think my question is kind of along those lines. I sit on the State Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee, and I'm wondering, has jurisdictional transfer been a part of this conversation? I'm not saying we immediately want to do it, because I don't know if we can, but has it been part of the conversation so far? If so, like, what does that look like?
Jess, do you want to start this one?
Yes. So there was a regional jurisdictional transfer study that Metro did several years ago, and through that process, TV Highway was not really on any near-term list that anyone is interested in taking ownership of this roadway from ODOT. It's different from 82nd Ave, where it's clear that that is in the city of Portland. They're ready to take it and work with it. Same with, Powell Boulevard is probably closer than that. Obviously, there's all the work that the city of Tigard's doing with Hall Boulevard. They're ready to go on that. TV Highway just doesn't have a happy home right now in terms of a new owner. It has come up, like we have revisited that question and basically gotten to that same answer, at least in conversations in this project. It should be an ongoing conversation about where this could go, because you all, as the folks who represent the people who live along this corridor, have a vested interest in making sure that the road works really well for them, because they live and travel there. And it's just it's a different thing in ODOT being farther removed from those people who are, yes, they're constituents, but it's really closer to home. So I don't think that it is in the list for anything that's going to happen anytime soon.
And I'll just say that the city has tried many, 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 many times. We did 3 Tiger grants, which was early renditions of the raised construction grant. We did multiple paid to have it analysis. We worked negotiations with ODOT on the road just 6 years ago, and Mark Fagan and Mark Sansucci tanked it because they didn't get the exact width of the sidewalk they want. And so it is a long, tenuous history with the city and this road and ODOT. So I would say firmly, under no circumstances, the mayor, would I agree to take this road unless there's significant improvement to it. And if we were going to enter jurisdiction a road right now, we would take Farmington, because it's in much better condition. But we're not in a fiscal place to make that road doable.
Yeah, that all makes sense. The state funding through the jurisdictional transfer process would come with enough funding to bring it up to a state of good repair. But that process is all new, so we don't actually know if the legislature will move forward with any of that. So there's a lot of unknowns out there. I think it's just the condition of the road is really frustrating. I do see that this is a step forward, so steps are good. So hopefully we can keep making some good progress. But I appreciate y'all coming tonight.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Thank you, Jess and Dave and Jocelyn. And Jocelyn and Andy have joined the TV Highway Party with me, which is exciting. And I recognize that I've had the benefit of being on this steering committee. We're getting close to 3 years. Jess, when you said at our last steerco that we started in April 2022, I think the mayor convinced me to be on this and told me it was only an 18-month commitment. So just let that be clear. But it's been, like, I have the benefit of going through these iterations with staff and with our colleagues in the different jurisdictions. And I just wanted to highlight a couple other things, that it's really hard to boil almost 3 years worth of work into a presentation for us. And number one, y'all did a really great job of talking about the journey, but also where we're at. There was moments when we were talking about 2 totally separate projects. Do you look at one end of the corridor or another end? And we all said, no, we need to look at this together, and we need to really show up in safety and in transit for our community. So I thought that was just something also worth sharing, but also staff had to remind us a lot, this is a transit project. Like, we all have those same hopes and desires for TV Highway. We all have those dreams of that Canyon Road project that was, 10 or 15 years ago. And so we all desire the same, and we all know what it can be, but we do have to really ground ourselves that this is a transit project. And then we also drove home, and it must be a safety project. One of the things that every single meeting starts with is kind of stories of TV Highway. And unfortunately, more than half of the stories have involved a fatality on TV Highway, you know, of like what's happened since the last time we've been there. So the Steerco, we said, we can't support a transit project without supporting a safety project as well. And so staff was, and everyone that has worked on this has been so responsive to that. So I would also encourage all y'all to ask me questions one-on-one. As best that I can answer, I will, right, before we get to our future work session too, because I do have just the benefit of having attended through the conversation. And I'll help lighten the load of the conversation too, if there's anything I can do, since our next steps are a work session within ourselves. And then I will go as Beaverton's vote to our Steerco too. And I want to make sure that I have your support in whatever that vote ends up being. And just a thank you for being with us tonight, because it's been really great to see the evolution of this and landed a project that the Steerco actually adopted that LPA, right? Or I can't remember exactly what we did, but the support, right, from the Steerco was there and it was unanimous. And that is definitely a testament to the amazing work that staff has done to make it happen.
Thank you, Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg, and I cannot control government timeline. I was told 18 months, maybe it was 2 years, and I shortened it for your agreement. Awesome. Well, we're going to have our city council work session to be able to give Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg some direction here relatively quickly. I would just say the city would love, and GR has met from the city and Metro a few times. I think there is a future where we could get support and help for our loop, and we could do support and help in this, and let's not treat it like competition. But we desperately need some help lifting the loop with all the same criteria that we're here. So I think there's a path forward, and we have a limited amount of time to help get our councilor a vote there. So I will ask Jocelyn to call their GR, and let's set up some conversation so we can make this a win-win. Thank you for joining us on the East Coast. Thank you for joining us in person. Thanks to Miles out in the audience who just loves local government. You didn't even have to answer any questions tonight. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is a proclamation. So tonight we have a proclamation from the Office of the Mayor, whereas in 1926, Harvard scholar Dr. Carter G. Woodson established the recognition of Black and African American history to recognize the accomplishment and active participation of African American people in shaping the development of our American democracy. And whereas Black communities have made numerous value and long-lasting contribution in history of the United States and Oregon's economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, and whereas the presence that the contributions of Black communities continue to enhance the quality of life in the city of Beaverton, and whereas Black communities have been the target of discrimination, exclusion, and violence based on identity, where conflicts with our core values as a community, and whereas in June 2020, Beaverton City Council passed a resolution denouncing systematic racism and committing to eliminate racism in city structures and practices to work towards the elimination of institutional racism in our community and to improve the lived experience of all people of color through our actions and leadership. Whereas Black History Month calls our nation's attention to recognize and celebrate the essential contributions and resilience of Black communities while acknowledging the injustice that remain. And whereas Black History Month is always a time where Americans are encouraged to reflect on our collective history of slavery and oppression of African and Black people and recommit to prioritizing racial justice, inclusion, and respect for human dignity in all we do. And whereas, though we celebrate Black History Month in February, we affirm that Black history is American history and recognize it as an ever-present part of our collective experience that we must pass on and learn from. And now I, Lacey Beatty, the mayor of the city of Beaverton, do proclaim February 2025 as Black History Month in the city. I would say generally in the past, issuing proclamations like this are a bit performative, but I would say in our history of where we are as a country right now, we need to continue to speak these resolutions into public, and we need to back them with action. So I really want to encourage our council and our staff and our community to eat at Black-owned restaurants, order a Black-owned book, like put our money and our priority into a community that we say these values represent. So this month, let's do something beyond a proclamation, but also recognize that with a federal government that's not going to be taking these stance anymore, it's imperative for local government to fill this leadership role. Okay, now we have consent agenda. Council President.
I want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on tonight's agenda? Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, included in this consent agenda is Agenda Bill 25015, the approval of the Restorative Justice Planning Grant. I just want to give a shout out to Carly Adams and the Center for Mediation and Dialogue and our municipal court staff. They've had a continual focus on restorative justice and making sure we are providing the best services we can possibly provide that keep people out of a cycle of crime and just be able to break free a little bit. So they've been doing some really good work, and I appreciate how proactive they've been with all of that.
It is one of the benefits of having a court of record, is these things that are very important to us. Any other discussion this evening? Will the recorder call the roll?
Counselor Duggar,
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Counselor Hassan,
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy,
Yes.
Counselor Teeter,
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon,
Yes.
Mayor Beatty.
Yes.
7-0.
Awesome. We are into the super fun part of our evening, our public hearings. So the next bit is going to be a lot of legalese between the city attorney and I, so bear with us. Tonight we are holding a public hearing regarding Agenda Bill 25017 and 25018, which involves application numbers LU 32024-01029, ANX 2024-01026, CMPA 32024-01027, and ZMAX 12024-0128. If approved, these applications would annex property to the city, assign the residential mixed-C zoning in the zoning map, and assign the lower density neighborhood land use designation of the comprehensive map for parcels of land on Southwest Poplar Lane. And I now call the public hearing to order. Before we move into the substance of the hearing, I'll ask the city attorney to cover some preliminary legal matters.
Thank you, Mayor. The hearing will proceed as follows. After the preliminary legal matters, city staff will make a presentation. Then members of the public will have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Finally, there will be a time for response or rebuttal to the public testimony by staff. Council members may ask questions of staff, applicants, or anyone else who testifies this evening. Anyone wishing to speak at the hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. For those attending in person, please fill out a yellow visitor's comment card found on the table in the back of the council chamber and give the card to the city recorder seated at the end of the dais and wait to be called. If you've joined the meeting online, let the city recorder know you wish to speak by clicking on the raise hand feature. When you speak, please give your name and city of residence for the record. Now I will cover the preliminary legal matters. The applicant has the burden of proving that the applications are consistent with the Beaverton Development Code, the Comprehensive Plan, and any applicable Beaverton Code provision. The criteria that must be addressed in this hearing are the Metro Code Section 3.09.045, Beaverton Development Code Chapter 40.97.15.3. Subsection C, and Beaverton Comprehensive Plan Sections 1.3, 1.4.3, and 1.5.2. Any testimony that speakers present must be directed at these criteria or at some other criteria that the speaker believes should apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. In addition, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Only those who submit written comments or give oral testimony this evening will have standing to appeal this decision or that have submitted testimony in the record. Do any council members wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias? Let the record show there were none. Do any council members wish to report any site visits or ex parte contacts? Let the record show none. Does any member of the audience wish to question the impartiality or ex parte disclosures of any council member? Let the record show there are no responses. And does anyone wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the council to hear this matter? Let the record show there were no responses. Mayor, that concludes the legal matters.
Awesome. Let's move to the staff presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Lena Smith. I'm an Associate Planner in the Community Development Department. I'll be presenting on the Poplar Lane annexation and comprehensive plan land use map and zoning map amendments. Tonight we'll be asking Council to decide on 2 items. Does Council support annexing the subject site into the City of Beaverton? And does Council support applying the proposed Beaverton land use designation and zoning to the site? The subject site is near the intersection of Southwest Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and Southwest Poplar Lane. It is 0.11 acres in size and is currently vacant and undeveloped. The property owners submitted a petition requesting to annex into the city in November, and the city is the applicant for the annexation tonight. If the council approves the annexation, the subject site will be incorporated into the City of Beaverton. Please note the adjacent Southwest Poplar Lane right-of-way is already in the city boundary. The second part of tonight's proposal is to assign a Beaverton land use designation and zone to the subject site if it is annexed into the city. The proposed map amendments are non-discretionary, which means it follows a table in Beaverton's comprehensive plan that converts the county designation to Beaverton designations. The site is currently designated Washington County R5, which converts to Beaverton's lower density neighborhoods designation and the residential mixed C zone. Please note we typically apply the designations to the center line of the right-of-way, which will be the case with this proposal as well. This slide outlines the applicable approval criteria for the proposed annexation and map amendments. As detailed in the staff reports that were attached to the 2 ordinances tonight, the map amendments and annexation comply with all applicable local, regional, and state approval criteria. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed annexation and map amendments. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none. Yeah, we're here, right? There's no, yeah. Now we'll hear testimony from the public. Is there anyone? No one rushing the dais? Okay. There
No one
appears
tonight.
no one tonight. There appears to be no members of the public who want to speak on this matter. We'll move on to comments from the staff. Do you have any additional comments from the attorney or staff regarding the application?
No additional comments, thank you.
Okay. So no, if council has no other questions, I'm going to call tonight's hearing to close. The council should first take up the annexation application and ordinance. Then if the application is approved, the council can consider the application ordinance for the zoning and comprehensive plan maps. For the annexation, the council may either approve the application and adopt the proposed ordinance or take other action. But if other action is proposed regarding the ordinance, the motion must include specific direction as to what the other action is. Is there a motion related to this?
Yes, Mayor. I move to approve the annexation application and adopt ordinance number 4860 and ordinance annexing 1 parcel of land near the intersection of Southwest Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and Southwest Polar Lane, withdrawing the property from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and adding the property to the West Slope Neighborhood Association Committee, LU 32024-01029, Polar Lane Annexation, ANX 2024-01026.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
No discussion, just a point of clarification. The name of the road is Poplar. For the record, if we have the word polar, I didn't know if that would affect anything. So Poplar is the cross street.
I said it, so then he said it, so you
Okay.
can blame me. uh, with that very technical correction to our vernacular, will the recorder please call the roll?
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg?
Yes.
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
7-0.
And also for the record, you don't actually know if it's pronounced that way or just.
I know it's not polar, and I don't want to accidentally annex the wrong house. Like, that would be really bad.
Now that the annexation has been approved, the council may either approve the zoning and comprehensive plan application and adopt the proposed ordinance or give specific directions to take other action. Is there a motion regarding the application and the ordinance? Does a council member wish to comment or make a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the application CPMA 32024-01027 and ZMAX 12024-01028 and adopt ordinance number 4861, an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map and zoning map for one parcel near the intersection of Southwest Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and Southwest Poplar Lane, abutting right-of-way located along Southwest Poplar Lane, LU 32024-01029, Poplar Lane annexation, CPMA 32024-01027, and ZMAX 12024-01028.
Second.
For what lane? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. We'd like to thank all of those who testified tonight, and by that, I mean Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg. If you would like to appeal this decision, you must appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals in accordance with LUBA's rules and any application provisions in the Beaverton Development Code. All right, tonight we are also holding a public hearing on Agenda Bill 25019 regarding Ordinance 4862, an ordinance amending the zoning map for parcels at 3640 Southwest 110th Avenue, LU 32024-00921 Kaiser Auto Zone. If approved, this application would change the zoning from parcel at 3640 Southwest 110th from community service to general commercial. I now call to order the public hearing. Before we move to the substance of the hearing, I will ask the city attorney to cover any preliminary legal matters.
Thank you, Mayor. The hearing will proceed as follows. After the preliminary legal matters, city staff will make a presentation, followed by the applicant's presentation, which will be limited to 15 minutes. Then members of the public will have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Council will take testimony first from those who are in support of the application, then from those who are in opposition, and finally from those who are neither in support nor opposed. After members of the public have testified, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Council members may ask questions of staff, applicants, or anyone else who testifies. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. Now I will cover the preliminary legal matters. The applicant has the burden of proving that the applications are consistent with the Beaverton Development Code, the comprehensive plan, and any applicable Beaverton Code provision. The criteria that must be addressed in this hearing are Beaverton Development Code Chapter 40.97.15.1.c, Zoning Map Amendment. Any testimony that speakers present must be directed at this criterion or at some other criteria in the code or comprehensive plan which the speaker believes should apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. In addition, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Anyone who submits written comments or gives oral testimony will have standing to appeal this decision. Because state and local law require council members to make certain disclosures, I will now go through the disclosures again. Do any council members wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias? Seeing none, Do any council members wish to report any site visits or ex parte contacts? Again, no, so let the record show there are none. Does any member of the audience wish to question the impartiality or ex parte disclosures, of which there were none, of any of the council members? The record should show there are none. And finally, does anyone wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the council to hear the matter? Let the record show there are no challenges. Mayor, that concludes the legal matters.
Awesome. Let's proceed to the staff presentation. No pressure, but it's been a real fun public hearing session so far, so I look forward to some more.
That would
Not hear.
That would be helpful. My apologies. Good evening. I'm Gianna Fox, the current planning manager with the City of Beaverton Planning Division. As noted in the script, we are here for the Kaiser Auto zone change public hearing. So our question tonight for council is, does the City Council support the proposed quasi-judicial zoning map amendment to rezone the subject site from community service to general commercial? The subject site, as you can see on this map, is located at 3640 Southwest 110th Avenue. It is located north of Canyon Road, which is an arterial, and east of 110th, which is a collector street. As you can see, the site is zoned community service currently, which is the same zoning district that is located to the west. That is the Kohl's department store, for context, and Highway 217 a little bit further to the west. It is abutted also to the south by general commercial zoning, that is a car dealership, and then to the north and east for residentially zoned properties, a mix of residential zones in the county and in the city. The site is about a half an acre in size, and it's had the current community service zoning designation since 1990, or an equivalent zone. The name of the zone has changed, but it's been a commercial zone of similar standing. The proposal is to change the zoning district to general commercial to match the zoning to the south of the current parcel. Both the general commercial and community service zoning designations are implementing zones of the regional commercial land use designation, which is why you're not seeing a comprehensive plan amendment that you often see in tandem with the zoning map amendment. So our overall policy for the city for this to be a regional commercial center remains the same, and the implementing zone that has the actual regulations related to proposed uses and setbacks and heights and those kinds of things, that is what is changing. There is no development proposed with this with the zoning map amendment. So any future application to build something on the site will be required to come back through a land use process where we would evaluate the design, the layout, the buffering, the setbacks, the height, all of those things that we look at when anyone proposes to build something. So there's no physical development. Primarily, what we call the site development standards, setbacks, heights, buffer requirements, those kinds of things are the same between the two zoning districts, but there are some differences in the uses that are permitted between the two zones. The other thing I would note is there is no anticipated trip increase based on the trip analysis that's done for zoning map amendments is based on the most intensive trip uses in each zoning district, and it is a drive-through restaurant, which is permitted in both. So there is no anticipated trip increase based on what could be built as the worst-case development under the current zoning and the worst-case development under the proposed zoning. So there's no anticipated trip impact based on the rezoning. And with that, staff has reviewed the applicable approval criteria in Beaverton Development Code, Section 4097-15-1C, and found that the proposal meets the approval for the criterion for approval, and also notes that the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council. With that, I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Okay, let's.
Oh, Mayor, I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Why this particular spot from CS to GS when there's a giant CS spot where I believe Kohl's is that is being untouched? Like, if it's largely the same other than a few things, why not change it all to GS?
Sure.
Help me understand that.
Thank you for that question. That's a great question. This is not a staff-driven proposal. This is a proposal made by the owner of the property. So that is why we're only considering the singular parcel.
And can you tell me specifically the differences between CS and GS that it would allow?
Yes, I can pull up all of them. The major one is.
Yeah, just major ones is fine.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest one is vehicle sales is the primary difference between the two.
Okay, and is the current landowner I'm assuming based on the Kaiser Auto, it's the car dealership?
I believe it is. The applicant is actually here to speak. They have property owner is KIPB LLC.
Okay.
So the property owner may be able to clarify who the underlying owner is, but
Okay.
that would be.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's continue with the applicant presentation, which is limited to 15 minutes. Please give your name, city of residence for the record.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, councilors. My name is Mercedes Sarah. I'm a senior planner with 3J Consulting, representing the applicant. My city of residence is Milwaukee, Oregon. Our office is located here in Beaverton, Oregon. So the site is located on 110th Avenue. It is a half-acre site that is currently occupied by a single-family home that has been proposed for demolition. The site is just north of Canyon Road and north of that Dameron Ford car dealership. Staff mentioned this, but the house on the site was built in 1946, and it was in Washington County at the time. In 1990, it was annexed into the city, and then it was applied the CC zone, which is now the CG zone. Just to note, this was a question at Planning Commission. There are houses to the north. Those were developed in 2007. The existing zone is community service. This matches the zone to the west. The zone to the north and the zone to the east are both residential, one in the city and one in the county, and then the zone to the south is what we are proposing to match. It is the community service, or the general commercial zone, shown here to match the existing zone to the south. This is consistent with the Regional Commercial Comprehensive Plan designation. As part of the approval criteria, it is demonstrated that the site can be served by all critical and essential facilities as identified by the city of Beaverton. We've made findings to show that this site is serviceable and would be serviced at the time of development of the site. As mentioned, a transportation impact analysis was done to show the highest use of the site in either configuration to develop or determine whether there were any impacts from the anticipated zone change. There were no shown impacts as the zone allows the highest use in both zones, and the proposal will not degrade performance of the existing or planned transportation facilities. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I can start with the question that was proposed earlier. The site is and has been owned by the dealership to the south, so they are looking to clear up some of their properties and get them all zoned the same so that they might, if they need to, expand.
Is there any questions from the council? Okay, we'll now hear testimony from the public, starting with those who are in support of the application. Is there anyone here in support of the application? Is there anyone here opposed to the application? Okay, there appears to be no members of the public who want to speak in support or oppose of this application. We'll move to testimony from, okay. Is there anyone here that is neutral? What a weird thing in there. Anyone here neutral to this application? They don't care. Would you like to come forward now? Okay. We will now hear testimony. Oh, well, it's the same line. There appears to be no other members of the public who would like to speak. So we'll now move to final comments from staff. Does the staff or city attorney have any comments for this application? Okay. Any last minute questions from the council? We're just being real thorough here. All right, the public hearing's now closed. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the application and adopt ordinance number 4862, an ordinance amending the zoning map for one parcel at 3640 Southwest 110th Avenue, LU 32024-00921, Kaiser Auto Zone Change, ZMA 32024-00918.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? We do have clarity on the name. It's said correctly. It's Kaiser. With that, will the recorder please call the roll?
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Hassan?
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg?
Yes.
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
7-0.
Great. If you'd like to appeal this decision, you must appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals in accordance with LUBA rules and any applicable provisions to the Beaverton Development Code. All right, Counselor Kimmy, we'll take a 5-minute break so you can get snacks. We'll see everyone at 7:30. Counselor Kimmy's got a snack. It's ready to go now. Okay, we're on to our last agenda item, 25021. And this is the agenda item that is last on the list. So I'm just saying, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and councilors, good evening. My name is Brian Martin. I'm the long-range planning manager for the city. With me is Sarley Hickson, who's an associate planner and the project manager for this effort. Just off the top, before we get started, I will note that this is a project with a shorter timeline because we have a state grant deadline coming up. But the project is a limited but important one to look at our mixed use and higher density residential districts to see if we can unlock some capacity for housing and jobs in those districts, and do it in a way that promotes very livable, human-centered places. So to get into a little more detail, I wanted to start with the map so we kind of know which areas of the city we're talking about. The map has the different brown and green geographies on it. The brown ones are zoned for higher density residential. The green ones are generally mixed-use districts where commercial and residential are allowed. The red lines on the map are the max lines, and the blue lines are bus lines, with the thicker lines being high-frequency transit. So a lot of these areas we're talking about are served by transit. The general thrust of the project involves looking for ways to allow more and larger buildings for things like housing, jobs, and services. Encourage places where people can live and also access a lot of other destinations like shops, jobs, and recreation. Some of the changes could make housing easier to develop and also promote places that are livable and people want to spend time in. The other couple things that this project can do is help us comply with the state climate-friendly and equitable communities rules, and it could implement a couple of our housing production strategies, one being unlocking more development in these districts, and the other having to do with accessible housing for people with disabilities. There's more complete information in your agenda bill packet, but the presentation will focus on 3 different topics. Looking at how we regulate maximum density in those zones that were on the map. Looking to for opportunities to reduce approval processes for certain uses in certain places, and then again, the accessible housing topic. So first on looking at our code and how it regulates maximum intensity. The thrust of the project is to look at taking 15 different districts that have a variety of approaches to regulation, maximum height, maximum density, maximum FAR, and really shift toward focusing on more using maximum FAR as the regulation. And what that does is it regulates the maximum building square footage on the site. So it gives you kind of the bulk envelope you can work within as a developer applicant. Floor area ratios, weird wonky planning term, so I'll take a second to explain what that is. It's the ratio between all the square footage on the site, all the floors of all the buildings on the site, divided by the square footage of the site. So if you have a 20,000 square foot building and a 20,000 square foot site, that's 1 FAR. And as you can see in the diagram on the right, that actually allows a lot of flexibility about how those square feet are arranged in buildings. You can have short flat ones and tall skinny ones. But if your maximum FAR was 1, those are kind of a range of options. I wanted to give an example of a code issue, because there are many, but this is a good one. In our station community, high density residential district, if you want to do a residential only project, you can do a building like this, a 6-story building. It's allowed, so there's really no obstacles. In the same district, if you want to do a mixed use building with some commercial in it, a maximum FAR applies of 1.2. So instead of a building the size of the gray square on the slide, you get a little white building instead. And you lose the opportunity to provide more housing or employment area on those upper floors. So the direction we'd like to head, the proposal to move forward is using those maximum floor areas somewhere in the range of between 4 and 7 in these districts, depending on their location, often depending on whether they're near transit or in a town center designation. And then removing some of the other barriers, like if there's a maximum height that's too low or a maximum density that's getting in the way. The other thing this does is it provides more flexibility with inside that box, because you can choose to do a bunch of 1-bedroom or studio apartments or 3-bedroom. It doesn't really matter as long as you stay inside that container. And you can also do commercial, of course, in many of the zones. So while we're doing that, if we do that, we could see more development, more building, more housing, which is something the community needs. At the same time, the project wanted to look at how to make them livable, attractive places that people want to live and people want to visit. So the city already regulates a lot of these topics, but the state rules and sort of a fresh update look could happen as we do the code and look at things like the design of the buildings and how that makes it comfortable for people, ground floor windows, weather protection, and architecture. And then site features that people can use, like open space, they can experience landscaping, and things like walkways between the building and to the street. So it's more of an update and like freshen up scenario. The second topic has to do with reducing approval processes, in this case, looking at conditional uses. So conditional uses are a special process where a use is allowed, but it has to go through public notice and a public hearing with the Planning Commission to get approved. And this is most useful when the impacts of a use are not so predictable. And a case-by-case review is more likely to get you a good outcome. So what we would like to do here is look for cases where a use in its zone is kind of expected there and the impacts are predictable. So it can not have to go through that special process at the Planning Commission. This could make it faster and more predictable for the applicants to go through. The city can also choose, if we can anticipate those impacts, we can also choose to add clear and objective standards to address them in the code instead of having it case by case. There's more complete information in the packet again, and we do plan to talk in detail with the Planning Commission about these next month. The last topic in the presentation is about accessible housing for people with disabilities. This was originally added to the project because we saw it was one of the city's housing production strategies, and we put it on the list to consider. When we were talking with the Planning Commission in January, they actually recommended additional study on this beyond what we can do during this shorter project. One of the things that came up was it could add cost to developments and actually affect the financial feasibility of them and possibly prevent some housing, which we need, of course. So staff recommends we actually take a look at this in a future project and take a more thorough look to see if there is a way to, through requirements or incentives or some other approach, meet the goal of having more accessible housing without the negative effects. But we're happy to hear your thoughts on that, of course. The next steps in the project are that Planning Commission work session next month. We're going to take them some draft code and work on some details with them, get their advice. We'd be back here in April to show you our work and show you where we're headed. And then we would deliver a version of the code to the state to meet the grant deadline in May. But we don't actually expect to ask you to approve this until the fall, so there's time to work on it in the summer if the Planning Commission or Council has more work for us to do or more thinking for us to do. That's the end of the staff presentation. We appreciate your time and are looking forward to your comments and questions.
Awesome, thank you. You've heard from me on the accessibility piece in our one-on-one that I have similar reservations as the Planning Commission right now. And before I feel comfortable jumping in to increase what the state minimum is, like I need some demonstrable evidence that this is needed and not going to impact the cost of housing, particularly with affordable housing. We know the delta to make it work in a project is so narrow that if we're adding cost to the building, it could make an entire building unaffordable. Not to say that I wouldn't support it in the future, I just need more data right now. Everything else makes sense to me as we're kind of moving forward. I mean, we need more housing. I was, testified in Salem today for vertical housing credits as a tool that we have used a lot. And so I think it's the desire of this council to get more housing built and take away as much roadblock as possible. And if this gets us there, it's great. And I'm glad to hear that we're going to look at the accessibility piece in a future study and not slow down the work we're doing right now. Let's see, who is first? Councilor Teeter. It's you? Sorry. Councilor Hartmeyer.
Councilor Hartmeyer and Prigg and I put in at the exact same time.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just going to give it to her. So
Good.
You go first.
Thank you. One of the things that, I think I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that, Mayor, because I think that if you use the concept of universal design, all housing can be accessible housing, and I don't know how much more it would add to the cost. So I think that us incorporating universal design into the concepts of the housing opportunity here hopefully wouldn't add to cost and wouldn't really add a burden towards us really aiming for creating a housing production that works for everyone in our community. And I'm also going to challenge you because I hear you talk a lot about aging in place with grace, and I think that housing accessibility can contribute to that. So I think that there's shared goals. I'm not saying it's not your value. I'm just saying that, I think in this case, I think both can be true. And so how can we incorporate that into the goals? So seeing that that's part of it, I think that I don't have the same reservation as just what I wanted to share. And I tried in my briefing to turn this into a whole code cleanup thing, and Anna set me straight that this is a really limited scope. So just thank you for the great work, because I think giving us the clear direction and the scope of what this is really helpful for us to give pointed feedback. So my primary thing is I think let's encourage more accessible housing with that universal design concept.
Councilor Teeter.
Okay, here I am. Okay, I really appreciate the work that you all have done on this. I'm really excited about a lot of this. I totally support getting rid of the setback restrictions and height limit restrictions and going to a more simplified just floor area ratio process for guiding our development. That said, I mentioned this in our 101s, like floor area ratio guidelines are not perfect, but they're better than some of our other options. I think of examples like different property sizes, like the Broadway East property in downtown is very small, so a floor area ratio of 5 on that site versus a floor area ratio of 5 on the Natural Grocer site right next door would have dramatically different sizes and bulk. And so I'm not sure how this ties in with different property sizes in these other zones because I'm not as familiar with the other zones. But it's just something that's on my mind that I'd like us to consider. Like, does property size affect the FAR restrictions we should have? So I might need some more information there, but I would kind of defer to staff's recommendation as we explore that a little bit. Regarding accessible design standards, I've got a little caution there as well. I'm cautious about the increase in cost that could potentially cause us to have less housing supply in general. I think I lean away, at least right now, I lean away from having a set requirement. You have to provide this many accessible units every single time, or you have to have an elevator in every single multi-story building. And I lean towards having an incentive that encourages developers to add these things, but I think I'm in line with the mayor here. Like, I want some more information about how it would actually play out. So I'm okay kind of, I don't want to say slow rolling it, but learning more and then making a decision on that. And I think that's it. Like, I really like the work that we've done here, and I think this is a really good step forward.
Councilor Kimmy.
Can you explain to me a little bit more about FAR? Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to try to use the picture as an example. So the FAR in this building is about 4.5. And if it completely filled up the whole site, it would be 6. But you can see there's a courtyard there, and there's a setback in front. So basically what you do is you count in this case, the building's the same all the way up. So you'd count the square footage on the first floor, and then you multiply it by 6 because there's 6 floors. So like that's your numerator like on top. And then you calculate the size of the site, and you divide by that. And the resulting is like the FAR number. So if you divide the building by the site here, it's 4.5. If your maximum is 6, then you're fine. Like you can do that. If your maximum is 3, you got a problem. So that's how that maximum FAR like controls how much you can put on a site.
What is it right now?
Well, it depends. There's 15 different zoning districts in this project. Okay. So the one I showed you here, the maximum was 1.2, which was the problem. It was getting a big haircut, yeah, and maybe like a body cut right, too in this case because it was pretty short.
Okay. Because if you go to like big metropolis like Seoul, Tokyo, whatever, right? They can, with a small lot, they can vertically build up like 7 stories, right? With maybe 2 parking spaces, they're able to do that. Is that feasible with the code that we have?
The code we have right now, no.
Doesn't allow that? Yeah.
Let me get it a little closer to me. There is no zone right now that would allow you to do that. The ones that allow unlimited height have really small density caps. The ones that allow unlimited density have really small floor area ratio caps. So basically, every time we've put in something that says, yeah, go ahead and build it, we've also either included or left behind something that's like, but not like that. Which is why we're trying to have less, or why we hope to have less different standards so we can have a more predictable outcome as to what we're actually going to get.
Is that something eventually you think we're going to change the code so that we could do that?
Yeah, this fall. I mean, this project in the areas that we covered, we would bring those to ask for your approval in the fall, okay, and so they would take effect this year if the project stays on schedule like that.
And the floor area ratio of 4 would probably get you a 6-story building, depending on what they did on the ground floor. and what they did on the top floors. So if it gets smaller, different. But you could probably get a 6-story building with a floor area ratio of 4.
Okay. And another question is that when you say mixed use, seems like we have a commercial at the bottom and residential, right? And I mentioned a few times, can it be both? Each unit could be office and living space at the same time. Do we allow that? The reason I am asking is in other countries, you have option to live at your workplace. That is considered work, office, and home, where a lot of people tend to do that when they're starting a new business. They want an office space plus when they can live there. And our code doesn't allow that.
Yeah, these are areas that usually have residential, commercial, and often they have live work as well. And there's also home occupations. So there's usually a range of options to both live in a district or in a building and work in that building. I can't actually recall, like in the 5th floor of an apartment building above a flower shop, like if you can run your business out of there. But we can provide more information about that next time we come.
Yeah, just wondering, for the future, we'll have a lot of young people hopefully come and use Beaverton as innovative center, starting a new business, whatever. They can really afford to rent the apartment plus pay for office space, right? If we can have that flexibility for the future, I think we can encourage a lot of people to come utilize it for younger folks. That's why there's a thought behind it.
You can correct me.
Yeah, so live work units, which are units that are designed to be both office and home, they're a type of use that would definitely be allowed in all of these zones. There's also the home occupation style, which is where you use one of your bedrooms as an office. As long as home occupations are allowed in those zones, and I think they all are, but we will definitely look at it and make sure they are, because that's something that should be allowed. Those would be allowed then, the type of home occupations where people aren't coming and going. Once you start getting into commercially designated space in the same place as residentially designated space, building code has a lot to say about that. Firewall separations are required. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there which we're not in control of. So that's definitely a consideration for that. But the stuff that we are in control of, yeah, those would be really appropriate to have in those spaces.
All right, thank you.
And I've definitely approved those in other jurisdictions.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Duggar. Yep, Councillor
Duggar. Thank you for this. I'm running a bit of a fever now, so hopefully what I say comes out at least somewhat coherent. So I ask for your grace tonight. First, I'm all for this. I think I just had my briefing on it a couple weeks ago, and it makes total sense. One of my big concerns lately, and I think this council has shared it, is there's an imbalance right now, especially in downtown. I think we talk a lot about residential space. Some of us talk about commercial space too. We've lost quite a few small businesses due to things like increasing rent, right? I think the market's out of balance. So anything that we can do to create more housing and more space, particularly for small business in downtown Beaverton, that's the only way we're going to get out of this crisis long term, is bringing that market into balance. So if we could squeeze more space here and there, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to second also Councillor Kimmy's comment on small lots. That's been on my list for a really long time. I think about dense, small scale development, including smaller scale lots, like the floor area, using the floor area ratio in a different way, as Councillor Teeter described, like on the Broadway East site versus the big market site a little bit down. I know folks right now who would be willing to build in downtown Beaverton, but all the sites are huge, right, that they could possibly buy, and it's a multi-million-dollar commitment just for the land alone. And so I think that's a long-term strategy I'd like to see. But as far as this work, I think it's fantastic, and I commend you. For the disability question. I actually have a question for you. Is the goal specifically for physical disability?
That's the one that's easiest to regulate, because we know what that looks like. So we know what ADA for people with mobility issues looks like. Fully accessible design can look a lot of different ways, and without knowing the exact population that you are building for, it's really difficult to know what that looks like. As we study it further, we can definitely look at ways where we can count different types of accessibility rather than just mobility accessibility, but that's as we study further, because I have no idea right now.
That's mostly what's in our wheelhouse is regulating the built environment as well. And I wanted to, as long as I'm speaking, mention that this project is actually not covered downtown because that was just a few years ago that was updated and it's kind of like already there.
Got it.
For the most part.
For the disability part, I think I would like to study it a little bit more because I think there's more we could do beyond just some of the physical disabilities. You know, there's depending on what reference or what resource you use, it's between 13 and 21. I've maybe even more different forms of disability, and I don't know that we can solve or even help in many of them or all of them, but I would like to look and I would like to try because, you know, I think about children on the spectrum. I think about people that are deaf, people that are blind. You know, all of those things. Like there might be meaningful steps we could take if we're going to do this work that I think just a slight pause to get it right, you know, would be helpful. And there's a ton of other ones too, right? So I'm really impressed with the work and I'm grateful for it. So thank you.
I'm gonna get used to using these reading glasses, but they came in handy as I was like staring at the map. I want to double down on being a little cautious around the idea of what it would look like to have requirements or mandates around any sorts of changes we want to see incorporate into designs, not because I'm not an absolute proponent of things like accessibility and aging in place, but because sometimes we over-engineer something to the point that we don't accomplish what we are hoping to see, much less housing of, you know, the amount that we're hoping to see. So I'd love to just see more detail on what that looks like and some examples of it, perhaps, of having been applied elsewhere. And the only other thing that came to mind for me was thinking about the reduced setback on sites like this. If you have site after site after site, that's a lot less trees, a lot less open space. And so making sure that we're keeping our eyes open on that, and how do you supplement for that or account for that so that these beautiful walkable streets also are beautiful as you're walking on them. And to just continuing the conversation around heat zones and canopy and all of that.
One of the, just briefly, one of the things that we're looking at is sometimes there are setbacks and buffer requirements and open space requirements. So we thought we'd look at, and landscaping, so we'd look at all those things that are asking for ground floor land and look at them more holistically. So we'll try to keep what you said in mind as we do that.
Well, that's all the questions we have, so, or suggestions. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, last agenda item, council new business. Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, just really quick. I know a lot of the federal changes recently have caused a lot of our community to be really scared and uncertain and uneasy about what to expect. I know the mayor and several of us are getting together with several organizations over the next couple of weeks to check in and see how we can be supportive. We also visited the Afghan Support Network last week, and they expressed a desire to get together with anybody who's interested. Just had a really good visit with them. So just a reminder for us, just keep on reaching out and making those connections, but also for our community that might be listening, like, there are changes at the federal level that are happening, but we as a local community are maintaining our commitments to our community members to be able to support you all in the ways that you need best.
Thank you, Councilor Teeter. As you guys know, my office is arranging over 35 visits in the next couple weeks, and many of you are attending them with me to talk directly with communities that are impacted. The ACLU is advising the national mayors on an approach like this that we're operating, and any action we take needs to be driven from the communities that are impacted and resist the urge to insert what we think is right. So let's hear from everyone, make informed decisions on how to move forward. And so I appreciate you guys that have signed up to meet with alongside me, the city manager. We've offered up the police chief. We're meeting with consulates. We're meeting with community-based organizations. We're taking a very wide meeting approach here and making sure we have the right people in the room to meet our community needs under the constraints of how the city can legally operate and what we can actually do, and how do we empower groups that are able to operate and say things that we cannot. It is a new world, and just to say that mayors across the country are being called to the federal government right now to defend sanctuary cities. Mayors are raising funds right now, a defense fund. They think mayors will be the first line of attack, and we're here to do the hard work for our community, but every step we need to take needs to be thoughtful and create the outcomes we want, which is safety in a community that feels safe with us. So as long as we continue to trend in that direction, I think we're going to be great. So there are some meetings where there's no counselors with me, so if you want to attend some more, please let us know. All right, friends, with that, we are done for the evening.